Hi, I'm Gerry from Gerry's Craft Room, and this video is part of the Save the Crafty YouTuber video hub, all organized by the lovely Justine Hovey. I will tell you more about this hub in a bit. I'm going to use a Catherine Polar inks, and she's one of the sponsors of this hub, and I donated 2 gift packs as well. I'm going to start with big dots, and I'm using the scrapbook.com ink blending tool with the domed foam applicator, and I press it down on my paper and twist it, and it's a bit like stamping with an ink blending tool, and it's a fun and simple way to get some color on your paper. I'm going to use all colors for this card. And I just keep pressing down the ink blending tool, and I also do it partly on the paper, so you get just partly circles. So a bit more about this hub. In this hub you will find a group of talented crafters of all different styles. All you have to do is watch, like the video, and then hop to the next video. And subscribe to all channels you like. Make sure to comment because there are lots of prizes to win, and tell if you are in the USA or international, as some prizes have restrictions on them. And the more you comment, the more chances you have on winning one of the prizes. Just so you know, I added the main products I used in the description box for you, as well as the link to the next channel. You can find the full list of supplies on my blog. And if you're new here and you like what you see, don't forget to subscribe. And when you do so, you may like to click the little notification bell that pops up next to the subscribe button, so you don't miss a thing. Now in the meantime I have filled up my card with the colored dots, and now I'm inking the edge of the card. I always think this gives a nice finish to a card. I started with just using up the ink that was still on my blending tool, and now I ink it again and I add some more ink along the edges. I come out from the sides and work my way in towards the card and hold the blending tool at an angle. And this is the finished background, and here's the card I made with it with a simple sentiment. Next is stencil coloring. I'm going to use the same color scheme as I did before, and I'm going to use my Make Art station. I have my stencil down on my paper with the big magnets to hold the stencil in place. I'm using the ink blending tool again with the same color scheme, and I'm going to color just a part of the big flower pattern that's in the stencil. I add a bit more ink in the middle to get a darker color, and I blend it out to the outsides to get a softer color. And to get the softer color, I use less ink and less pressure. Now I'm going to add my second color. I add my second color around the first color I added, and I go over the first color a little bit to blend both colors together. For these first petals I wanted to add some pretty bold colors, so I ink up the blending tool in between, and I decided to add a little bit more color to the outside of the pattern in the same color. So I blend it out. I move the magnet a little bit so I can reach the outside of the pattern. And you can move the magnets around, that's no problem, because the other magnets will hold the stencil in place. Now this kind of coloring is basically like coloring with pencils or markers. You just add some more color in some spots, you add some darker colors or lighter colors, and you keep some spots open if you like, or blend colors together. This is just fun playing with the colors and just filling up your pattern. As you can see, I'm playing a bit with the darker and lighter colors in the same color, so adding a little bit more or less ink. And I filled up quite some space of my stencil, but I left some spots open, and there I'm going to add the green color. I just add the green color in the same way with a little ink on my blending tool. And I move the magnet around a bit so I have space to reach the open spots. You can see the color on my blending tool is still enough, and it's a really light touch of green. So this is my finished background, and here is the card I made with it with a big sentiment and some Nouveau drops. On with the next technique, the textured florals. For this technique to work best is to have a complete colored background. I'm using my ink blending tool to color the background. There are many ways you can color a background. I'm going to color the background with the ink blending tool again, and I'm using a circular motion to add my ink to my card. I add the ink in just random places. I don't go for a complete blended look, as this will not show in the end result, so it's just a waste of time. I'm going to add my next color, and I add it in random places again. And I don't mind any darker spots here and there either, as that will give some extra texture in the end result, and I really like that. But that's just a personal preference, so you can blend it out as much as you like also. Now I'm adding a little bit more of the orange to get a deeper color there. And then I'm adding some more of the pink in between. And I just keep on adding my color until I like the depth of the color and where I added the color. So now I'm going to just about fill all the card, and there's not much space left for my green. But I add some of the green in the open spots, and I also going to add it along the edges of the card. And this will give you a kind of weird color green, but it's fun in the end result, you will see. I'm going to use an embossing folder. I misted the back of the card with a little bit of water, and now I add my embossing folder with a little bit of an angle in my die cutting machine. And here you can see a really pretty embossed image. Now I'm going to sand my card, and this will make the raised or embossed part pop a little bit more, as the white will show again from the card as you sand off the colored parts from the ink. I'm using a little sanding tool for this, but you can also use a bit of sandpaper or a sanding block if you prefer that. And you can add more or less pressure to take away a little bit or a lot of the ink. I'm done with the sanding, and now I brush away the little bits and the dust that came off with the paper. This is the finished background, and on my card I used 3 layers of the same sentiment to add some dimension. And on with the wonky stripes. I have a scrap piece of paper and I tear off a strip. I love tearing paper and I use it for all kinds of projects. It gives some fun texture with hardly any effort. I add it on my card with the magnets, and now I'm going to add my ink. I apply it in a circular motion, and I'm going to go over the torn part of the paper so I get a nice darker edge. Now I'm going to take off the magnets and take off the paper and tear off another piece, and this way you get another fun torn edge and some different texture, which will add to the fun end result and the fun look of the complete background. I add my second color the same way, and I add it along the edge of the torn part first, and I added most there, so I get a nice darker edge and a bit of a softer blended look towards the first color. Now it looks like quite a bit of work, but as you can see it's done real pretty fast. The most work is tearing off and putting down your paper again. I'm going to add the next color. I'm doing that in the same way as I did the previous colors. With this color I push a little bit too hard on my blending tool. With ink blending you basically just let your tool slide over the paper at a bit of an angle and not press too hard, because then you will get a line or a stain, and you don't want that. I do like a bit of texture, but not heaps of color or lines like that, pretty harsh lines. You want a soft blended look. So I've torn another piece of the paper and I add my next color ink. So I'm going to repeat the first color like I started with, basically. So I'm going to add my next color again. I'm going to tear off another piece of the paper, and then I'm going to line it up a little bit below the previous color. I add the magnets again, and then I'm going to add the next color. So I add the ink again with the ink blending tool a bit at an angle, going over the torn part first, adding most color there and blending it out towards the previous color. I'm going to repeat this a few more times to fill the card, so let's speed things up. So I'm finishing up with the last colors, and for the last color I turn the card and I'm going to add my green on the other side. So I just go over the edge and add the most color there and blend it out towards the previous color. So here's the finished background, and I kept the card real simple with a big sentiment and some Nouveau drops. And on with the next technique. And I call them seeds in a row, and they're not really seeds in a row, but it looked like it at the end result, so let's check it out. I am using a shifter stencil from Tim Holtz. And I'm going to add my first color ink, and I'm going to use 3 colors ink on this one. So I just add about 3 rows for my first color, and then I'm going to switch over to the next. And it's a good idea to clean your stencil with a cloth, something dry, not a wet wipe, that won't work. And then go on to the next color. This way you don't contaminate the colors. So I'm adding the next color again, this time in 4 rows, so my card is going to be completely filled. And then I'm going to go to the next color, and I move my ink pad and my blending tools so I don't pick the wrong blending tool for the right ink pad or the other way around. So I use the same color blending tool with the matching ink pad. So I added my last row. Now I'm going to take off the magnets and I'm going to shift my stencil. And there are little dots or little lines on the stencil, so it's really easy to shift your stencil and line it up again. I'm adding the magnets again on the stencil, and now I'm going to start with the last color that I used at the bottom. Now, using foam applicators with a stencil can be a little bit tricky because you can damage them real easy. I find that these domed applicators with a very dense foam hold up really well with stencils, but there's just a trick that you can use with any foam applicator. Just don't push too hard. You want to go over the top of the stencil and you don't want to go through the stencil, so you don't have to push it through the holes of the stencil. Just make sure your stencil is lying on a flat surface. That will also help keep the blending tool in good shape, and it will also work best with thinner stencils like this one. I'm finishing up with the last color, and then I'm going to take off the stencil, and then you can see the end result. Now, this doesn't look much like seeds in a row, but I turned it around for the card and look, there you have the seeds in a row. I added a big sentiment and some vellum behind it to make it pop a little bit more. So here are my 5 cards together with one color scheme. Now make sure to hop along to support all crafty YouTubers, and make sure to comment so you have a chance on winning one of those amazing prizes. Subscribe to all channels you like. Don't forget to share and give videos a thumbs up. And as always, make sure to keep on crafting.